Welcome back to Tech Stack for all you tech enthusiasts. In this video, we're going to talk about the Angular component lifecycle. Whenever an HTML page is rendered, a lot is happening behind the scenes. Things are created, updated, and eventually cleaned up. The same idea applies to Angular components. Before a component loads, Angular performs several steps. After the component is loaded, even more things continue to happen in the background. Angular gives us specific lifecycle events where we can write our own logic and hook into these moments. These lifecycle events cover the entire journey of a component, from the moment it is created, added to the DOM, updated, and finally destroyed. There are multiple lifecycle events, and they are executed in a well-defined sequence. Understanding this sequence helps us know exactly where to place our code and why. Open the Pages folder, then open the integrated terminal. From there, create a new component called Lifecycle. Now open the approutes.ts file and add a route for the lifecycle component. Open app.html and add a lifecycle link to the navigation bar. Now open a new terminal and run ngAfter to check that the component is working. As you can see, the component is working fine. Now open the Lifecycle component class, where we implement the different lifecycle events. The first lifecycle event is ngOnInit. This event runs once, right after the component is initialized. It's the place where we usually write setup logic, such as initializing data, calling APIs, or preparing anything the component needs when it first loads. To use this lifecycle event, add on init to the implement section of the component class. Inside ngOnInit, we log a message to the console so we can clearly see when this lifecycle event is executed. The next lifecycle event is ngAfterContentInit. It runs once after Angular finishes projecting external content into the component. Inside ngAfterContentInit, we log a message to the console so we can clearly see when this lifecycle event is executed. To use this lifecycle event, add AfterContentInit to the implement section of the component class. The next lifecycle event is ngAfterContentChecked. It runs after Angular checks the projected content for changes. Inside ngAfterContentChecked, we log a message to the console so we can clearly see when this lifecycle event is executed. To use this lifecycle event, add AfterContentChecked to the Implement section of the component class. The next lifecycle event is ngAfterViewInit. It runs once after the component's view and its child views are fully initialized. Inside ngAfterViewInit, we log a message to the console so we can clearly see when this lifecycle event is executed. To use this lifecycle event, add AfterViewInit to the Implement section of the component class. The next lifecycle event is ngAfterViewChecked. It runs after Angular checks the component's view and its child views for changes. Inside ngAfterViewChecked, we log a message to the console so we can clearly see when this lifecycle event is executed. To use this lifecycle event, add AfterViewChecked to the Implement section of the component class. The next lifecycle event is ngDoCheck. It runs whenever Angular performs change detection, letting us add custom checks beyond the default behavior. Inside ngDoCheck, we log a message to the console so we can clearly see when this lifecycle event is executed. To use this lifecycle event, add DoCheck to the Implement section of the component class. The next lifecycle event is ngOnDestroy. It runs just before the component is destroyed, letting us clean up resources like subscriptions or timers. Inside ngOnDestroy, we log a message to the console so we can clearly see when this lifecycle event is executed. To use this lifecycle event, add onDestroy to the Implement section of the component class. Now, open the browser and check the sequence in which all the lifecycle events are executed. Before moving ahead, as you know, Angular recently released Angular 21. We are covering Angular 21 from scratch, so if you're a beginner or intermediate, this series will be highly recommended for you. We have also provided the Angular 21 playlist in the description for easy access. Open Inspect Element in the browser and go to the Console tab. You can see the sequence of lifecycle events in the console. ngOnInit, ngDoCheck, ngAfterContentInit, ngAfterContentChecked, ngAfterViewInit, ngAfterViewChecked. Now click on any link in the navigation bar, and you'll see ngOnDestroy get triggered. ngOnInit runs once when the component is initialized, and it's the ideal place to make API calls, fetch data, or set up initial values. ngAfterContentInit runs once after Angular projects external content into the component, letting you act on that content if needed. ngAfterContentChecked runs after every check of the projected content, allowing you to respond to any changes. ngAfterViewInit runs once after the component's view and child views are initialized, while ngAfterViewChecked runs after every change detection of the component's view and its children. ngAfterViewInit is also the right place to access elements or child components using viewChild. ngDoCheck runs during every change detection cycle, letting you perform custom checks beyond Angular's default detection. ngOnDestroy runs just before the component is destroyed, giving you a chance to clean up resources like subscriptions, timers, or event listeners. It is commonly used to unsubscribe from observables or detach event listeners to prevent memory leaks. If you're passionate about learning new technologies, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Tech Stack, and keep learning new skills. Thank you. And remember, consistency is the key to success.